The night had fallen like a curtain of ink, thick and suffocating, pressing down on the forest as though it wanted to swallow her whole. Rain hammered the branches, turning leaves into slick, trembling blades, and soaking through the fabric of her clothes until they clung to her skin like a second icy layer. Elaria Frostwind stumbled over tangled roots, the mud sucking at her boots with every step, trying to keep her trapped. Her breaths came in ragged gasps, each inhale burning her lungs, each exhale trembling with fear and exhaustion. She could hear them, their growls low and guttural, cutting through the storm like knives. The shadow beasts. The creatures her own pack had sent after her. She had been offered as a sacrifice, a pawn in their fear of her power, and now every step she took was a fight for her life. Ilaria's heart hammered in her chest like a war drum, her pulse racing faster than her legs could carry her. The forest twisted around her, dark and alive, branches clawing at her face, raindrops stinging like icy needles. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the pale, terrified determination on her face. She didn't dare look back, though every instinct screamed at her to, warning her of the danger snapping at her heels. The wind screamed through the trees, carrying with it the scent of wet earth and the metallic tang of blood, her own and perhaps theirs. Fear had become a living thing inside her, twisting her stomach into knots, tightening her throat, making her legs shake with every step. And yet, there was another feeling rising, deep beneath the panic, a pulse she couldn't quite control. A surge of untamed power, silver flame flickering just beneath her skin, radiating warmth and danger, threatening to spill out. It had always been there, whispering in her bones, teasing her when she was afraid, reminding her that she was more than flesh and fear. She could feel it now, pounding in rhythm with her heartbeat, urging her to run faster, fight harder to survive. But she didn't yet know how to tame it, didn't yet understand how to wield it without losing herself in its fire. She stumbled into a narrow ravine, the earth slippery beneath her boots. She pressed herself against the cold stone wall, letting the rain plaster her hair to her face, letting her chest rise and fall in rapid, shallow breaths. She dared a glance over the jagged edge of her hiding spot. The shadows moved. Low growls echoed, mingling with the roar of the storm. They were close. Too close. The forest around her seemed to breathe, shifting with malevolence, as though the trees themselves were watching, waiting to see if she would survive. Her fingers dug into the wet soil, clawing for traction, for purchase, for something, anything, that would keep her alive. Ilaria's mind raced. Memories of the pack, of the betrayal, surged up unbidden. Faces she had trusted, friends she had called family, all turned against her in a moment of fear. They had branded her dangerous, cursed, a threat to their control. And yet here she was, running through the storm, hunted by the very creatures she had once helped tame, and clinging to the fragile thread of hope that she could make it through the night. Every sound made her flinch, every shadow could be the one that ends her life. And still her spirit burned. Even battered, even drenched, even terrified, Elaria refused to surrender. Her lungs screamed for air, but she forced herself to slow her breathing, to listen. The wind carried a sound, a soft, almost imperceptible rustle of leaves, that didn't belong to the storm. Her silver flame surged again, hot and wild, making the hairs on her arms stand on end. She didn't understand it, didn't yet know what it meant, but she knew one thing. She was not going to be taken quietly. She was not going to be another forgotten soul, left to the mercy of those who feared her. He was more than that. He had to be more than that. Lightning lit the forest in a harsh white glare, and in that brief illumination she caught a glimpse of them. Shadows slinking through the rain-soaked underbrush, eyes glowing, fangs gleaming in the fleeting light. Her heart leaped, terror and adrenaline mingling into something sharper, more alive. There was nowhere to run, no safe path, no friendly face to turn to. Only the storm, the forest, and the creatures hunting her. And yet, there was something else, buried deep in the pit of her fear, something that refused to let her crumble. She pressed her back to the stone wall of the ravine, knees trembling, soaked through, hair plastered to her cheeks, breath coming in ragged bursts, and whispered to herself, "I will survive. I will not be their sacrifice. Not tonight." The rain poured harder, the wind shrieked louder, and the shadow beasts advanced, claws scraping against wet roots, fangs snapping, growls vibrating through the sodden air. But Ilaria's eyes glimmered with determination, a spark of something dangerous and unyielding. She was terrified, yes. Exhausted, yes. But she was alive. And for now that was enough. Somewhere, deep in the forest, her power stirred. The silver flame flared beneath her skin, a promise she didn't yet fully understand, a warning to those who thought they could control her. She wasn't just running. She was rising. Every heartbeat, every shiver of fear, every surge of adrenaline, pushed her further into the storm, deeper into the night, toward whatever fate awaited her. Her boots slipped in the mud, her hands scraped against the jagged stone of the ravine wall, but she kept moving. Each breath was a struggle, each step a defiance. Somewhere in the darkness, the beasts paused, hesitant, sensing the fire inside her even if they didn't understand it. And for a brief, fleeting moment, Elaria felt it, the first taste of hope. That maybe, just maybe, she could survive this night. If you're ready to follow Ilaria's journey, if you want to feel every heartbeat, every pulse of danger, every spark of forbidden power, then subscribe to Anne's Romance Collections, where every story burns, where every tale reaches into the deepest corners of the heart, and where you'll never just listen, you'll live it. The forest seemed to hold its breath. Rain still pounded against the trees, though now it was lighter, almost hesitant, as if even the storm itself had paused to witness what was about to unfold. Elaria Frostwind pressed herself closer against the cold stone of the ravine wall, her muscles trembling, soaked to the bone, heart hammering like a war drum that refused to quiet. Every instinct screamed at her to run, yet she froze. There was a presence, something solid, powerful, impossible to ignore, moving through the shadows of the trees. She couldn't see him fully yet, couldn't make out a face, couldn't yet tell if he was friend or foe. Then he stepped into the clearing, just beyond the reach of the rain's heaviest lash, and the world seemed to shift. Ronan Stormclaw. The name alone carried weight, reverberating through the forest like a warning bell. He was banished, yes, cast out for reasons whispered in fear, rumors carried in shadows. But there he stood, as real and commanding as the storm itself. His presence pressed on her chest like a tangible force, heavy, impossible to ignore. The air between them crackled, not just from the static of the rain but from something deeper, something alive. Ilaria's pulse stuttered. Fear laced with disbelief. Awe mingled with terror. How could he be here? Why would he care about her survival? He had been absent from every story she had ever been told, absent from every expectation she carried, and yet now he stood there, an enigma wrapped in rain-darkened leather, eyes glinting like predatory amber, sharp, intelligent, unreadable. He didn't move with the hesitation of someone approaching a stranger. He moved with the certainty of a predator who knew exactly where the hunt would end. Then he spoke, voice low, resonant, carrying over the wind and rain, cutting through the fear that clung to her chest. You shouldn't be here, yet I can't leave you to them. The words were simple but heavy. Protective, warning, demanding, and something else. Something she couldn't yet name, familiar, almost intimate in its careful tone. Before Elaria could respond, the shadow beasts lunged. Their eyes glowed crimson in the storm's dim light, teeth bared, claws reaching. But Ronan didn't flinch. He didn't hesitate. In one fluid motion he shifted, not fully but enough to reveal the power coursing beneath his skin. Muscles tensed, eyes narrowed, his aura flaring with danger and control. And then he moved, a blur of motion faster than her eyes could track. The beasts didn't stand a chance. He struck with precision, with brutal efficiency, fangs and claws tearing, snapping, the sounds of the struggle mingling with the thunder overhead. Ilaria's breath caught in her throat. She wanted to look away, to shield her eyes from the violence, from the terror, from the sheer overwhelming power of the man who had appeared from the shadows. But she couldn't. Something in her chest twisted. A mixture of fear, relief, and something she refused to name. Her pulse raced in tandem with the rapid beats of his assault on the creatures, her body trembling, heart hammering, stomach twisting with adrenaline and awe. When the last beast fell, silence fell over the forest in sharp contrast to the storm's fading roar. Rain still dripped from leaves and branches, dripping from his hair and the edges of his coat, but the danger had passed, for now. And yet the tension didn't leave. It hung heavy, thick, almost suffocating. Ronan's eyes found hers across the distance, piercing, assessing, measuring. He didn't move closer immediately. There was a war raging behind those amber eyes, a battle of caution, of mistrust, of desire he refused to name even to himself. You survived, he said finally, almost a statement, almost a question, carrying undercurrents of disbelief and respect. His voice was softer now, but no less commanding, as if acknowledging her resilience, her fight, her unbroken will. I've been watching, he admitted, a shadow of a confession slipping past the edge of his controlled demeanor. You're stronger than I imagined. Elaria pressed herself tighter to the stone, shivering from more than just the cold. Her mind spun. Watching. How could he have watched her? Why had he not intervened sooner? And yet, even as fear and suspicion coiled in her stomach, something else tugged at her chest. Gratitude. Relief. A spark of trust she wasn't ready to recognize fully. He had saved her. He had appeared out of the storm untouchable and fierce, and he had protected her when the world wanted nothing more than to see her broken. I can handle myself, she managed, voice shaking despite her best effort to steady it. I don't need. Her words caught in her throat as she tried to comprehend him, the energy that radiated from him, the sheer intensity of his presence. It wasn't arrogance, it was control. Calm in the chaos. Danger in the stillness. And attraction. Yes, undeniable, impossible, curling in her chest like fire she didn't yet know how to contain. Ronan's lips curved just slightly, almost imperceptibly, as if acknowledging her defiance, her fire, her audacity. Maybe, he said, voice low and measured, but right now, you need me. There was no mockery there, no superiority, just the barest edge of truth, plain and undeniable. Her pride bristled, yet even as she bristled, her body betrayed her, leaning instinctively toward the safety he represented, toward the strength he exuded, toward the unspoken promise he offered without saying it aloud. For a long moment they simply stared at each other, the storm washing around them, the air thick with tension, with something electric and unspoken, with an understanding that neither of them could yet articulate. Then he stepped closer, not threatening, not dominating, but closing the space between predator and prey in a way that left her heart racing, in a way that made her knees weak despite every instinct screaming to run. I know who you are, Ronan admitted, voice lower now, intimate in the way it brushed over her consciousness. And I know what they want you to be. But I also know, there is more inside you than they will ever see. More than they deserve to witness. You're not just a girl running through the dark, Elaria Frostwind. You're something else entirely. The words sank into her, heavier than any stone, warmer than the chill of the rain. Her silver flame surged again beneath her skin, pulsing in rhythm with the newfound hope and fear he stirred in her. She had been hunted, betrayed, left for dead, and yet here he was, a living, breathing guardian, banished yet unbroken, offering her a chance at survival, a chance at something more. The shadow of doubt still lingered. Who was he truly? Why had he watched? And yet, beneath the fear, beneath the exhaustion, beneath the raw terror of the storm and the creatures that hunted her, Elaria felt something she hadn't allowed herself in a long time. Trust. Fragile, trembling, tentative trust, but trust nonetheless. And in that trust, in that silent acknowledgement of each other's power, danger, and unspoken longing, a seed was planted. A connection neither had yet claimed, but one that would grow in the nights to come through battles, betrayals, and fire. For now there was only the storm, the forest, and the man who had appeared from nowhere to save her. For now she was alive. For now that was everything. The forest had quieted, though the rain still drizzled from the heavy clouds, settling into a gentle rhythmic patter on the leaves above. Elaria Frostwind crouched behind the sheltering rock of the ravine, soaked, shivering, and utterly exhausted, yet unable to let her mind rest. The echoes of her near-death pursuit still vibrated in her chest like the fading tremors of an earthquake. Her heartbeat had not yet slowed. Adrenaline still lingered, tangling with the fear, with the terror, and with something else, something she could not yet name, that stirred uneasily in her chest. She pressed her palms against her knees, leaning forward, staring down at the mud-streaked earth, and let herself sink into memory. It was easier there in the past where the familiar pain of rejection could be faced, than in the stark, terrifying reality of the present. She remembered the first time she had realized the silver flame inside her was more than just heat, more than just instinct. It was dangerous. Forbidden. The elders of the Shadowpine pack had whispered behind her back, their eyes wide with fear, their voices trembling when they spoke her name. Too powerful, unstable, cursed. Ilaria's stomach twisted as the memories washed over her. The first time the flames had erupted uncontrollably, scorching the earth around her, singeing the hands of someone who dared come too close, she had felt awe and fear collide within her. She had been 12, untrained, unready, yet the pack had seen only the destruction, the threat. Their faces, pale and tight with fear, had burned into her memory. The whispers had followed her, threaded through every corner of her childhood, every step she had taken. They had told her she was dangerous, that she could not be trusted, that her bloodline was a curse. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, Elaria had begun to believe them. She had become careful, hiding the flames, suppressing the surge that felt like life itself. She had learned to run when her emotions flared, to bite back the heat that threatened to spill over, to never, ever let anyone see the power inside her. But that suppression had come at a cost. Loneliness had become her constant companion. Mistrust had settled over her like a heavy cloak. She had learned to rely on no one, to give her heart only to the shadows, and even they had not always been kind. And now here she was 19, drenched, trembling, hunted through the storm, and yet alive. Alive because someone had intervened. Alive because Ronan Stormclaw had appeared from the shadows, moving with a precision, a power, and a certainty that both terrified and fascinated her. She had never met someone who could command presence like he did, who could make her pulse race in terror and fascination at the same time. And yet, as awe and fear mingled in her chest, so did something more, something tentative, fragile, a spark of trust she hadn't felt in years. Her mind turned back to him, to the amber eyes that had measured her, that had seen her not just as prey, not just as a frightened girl, but as something more. Something dangerous, yes, but also extraordinary. He had recognized her power, even in its untrained state, even in the raw chaos of fear and rain. And there had been no mockery, no scorn. Just acknowledgement, respect, and she would not admit it yet, an undercurrent of something warmer, deeper, that tugged at her chest like a hidden flame demanding to be noticed. She shifted slightly, hugging her knees, feeling the cold stone against her back. The memories pressed in again, unbidden and relentless. She remembered the way the elders had looked at her when she had tried to speak up, tried to explain herself, tried to ask why her power was considered a curse rather than a gift. Their faces had hardened, lips pressed into thin lines, eyes sharp and accusing. "You are dangerous," they had said. "Your fire is not for us." And with each accusation, each dismissal, each whispered fear, Elaria had retreated further into herself, burying pieces of her identity, hiding her flames beneath layers of caution and quiet desperation. Her body shivered, not from the cold, not entirely, but from the ache of old wounds reopening. Shame, humiliation, and betrayal twisted together into a familiar weight. She had never truly belonged, not with the Shadowpine pack, not anywhere that had ever known her. And yet, even in the memory of rejection, even in the sharp sting of those years, there had always been a spark, faint, fragile, often forgotten, that whispered she was capable of more. That she was stronger than the fear, stronger than the judgment, stronger than the isolation that had become her life. And now Ronan. Ronan, who had appeared when the darkness threatened to consume her. Ronan, whose presence pressed against the raw nerve of her fear, and yet somehow offered safety. His hands had been swift, his movements lethal, and yet he had fought with restraint, as though even in battle he had sought to protect her rather than overwhelm her. And in that she had seen something rare, control, mastery, power tempered with restraint, a reflection, perhaps, of what she could become if she dared trust herself, if she dared allow the silver flame to burn fully without fear. Her chest tightened. She had spent so long hiding, so long doubting, so long believing she was unworthy of trust, unworthy of love. And yet, in the echo of his voice, in the shadow of his amber eyes, she had felt a crack in the armor she had built around her heart. A dangerous crack, yes, one that left her vulnerable but also alive. She could feel it. A connection forming, tenuous and fragile like the first threads of a web, delicate but strong if woven with care. The storm had softened into a quiet drizzle now, rain dripping from leaves and branches, soaking her hair and clothes, but the world felt suspended, held in a moment that belonged solely to her and him. She dared a glance, shy, uncertain, at the figure standing across the clearing. Ronan's gaze met hers, unwavering, steady, and the weight of it pressed against her like gravity itself. He had seen her, not the frightened girl, not the hunted sacrifice, but the fire, the untamed potential, the power she had spent her life concealing. A shiver ran down her spine, not from cold but from the truth of it. She was more than they had ever allowed her to be. She was more than the whispers, the fear, the rejection. And for the first time in years she wondered, tentatively, tremblingly, if she might be worthy of someone seeing all of her, accepting all of her, even the dangerous, untamed parts that had kept her isolated for so long. The rain continued its gentle rhythm, a backdrop to the storm of emotion inside her. She pressed a hand to her chest, feeling the pulse of her silver flame beneath her skin, not yet fully under control, still wild and raw but alive and insistent. She let herself feel it, let herself acknowledge it, and in doing so, Let herself feel something she had not allowed herself to feel in years. Hope. Hope and fear tangled together. Loneliness and connection twisting in ways she could not yet untangle. She had been hunted, betrayed, offered as a sacrifice, and yet here she was. Alive. Standing at the edge of a new beginning, and someone fierce, banished, dangerous, yet profoundly present, had shown her that she might not have to face the darkness alone. Her breath came in shallow, uneven gasps, chest tight with the weight of all she had endured, all she had hidden, all she had feared. And still she felt the pull, the undeniable magnetism of trust forming where none had existed before. Ronan Stormclaw, banished Alpha, had entered her life like a storm within a storm, shaking her foundations and leaving something raw and real in his wake. Elaria knew she was not ready. She could not yet speak the words of trust aloud, could not yet claim the feeling swelling in her chest. But she felt it unmistakably, undeniably, like a pulse of fire threading through her veins. And for now that was enough. For now she would allow herself to be seen. For now she would allow herself to exist in this fragile, dangerous, exhilarating moment. And somewhere deep inside, beneath the fear, beneath the exhaustion, beneath the years of rejection and shame, a spark ignited. A spark that promised that perhaps, just perhaps, she could rise not alone, but with someone who had already begun to see the fire she had spent a lifetime hiding. The forest thinned, giving way to jagged cliffs that rose like the spires of a forgotten cathedral. Mist clung to the rocks, curling around them in ethereal tendrils, swirling like ghosts caught between earth and sky. Elaria Frostwind's boots slipped on the slick stones, soaked through, muscles trembling, but her gaze was fixed ahead. Through the haze, the ancient moon altar emerged. A colossal stone slab, carved with runes that pulsed faintly under the pale glow of the moon, veins of silver light running across its surface like flowing water of energy. It seemed alive, as though it breathed with a rhythm of its own, calling out, whispering secrets that only those who belonged could hear. Ronan Stormclaw moved beside her, silent, controlled, the very image of power restrained. His amber eyes reflected the glow of the runes, and for a moment, Elaria thought she saw something flicker in his expression. A shadow of reverence, a trace of fear, and a depth of knowledge he had not yet shared. She wanted to ask him what it was, wanted to understand, but the air itself seemed to hold her tongue. The mist carried whispers, carried echoes of a time long before either of them, of alphas who had risen and fallen, of destinies written in silver and fire. Her pulse quickened as the whispers brushed against her mind, unintelligible yet strangely familiar. The power within her, the silver flame, reacted instinctively, flickering beneath her skin, tracing her veins with heat and light. She felt it tug at her, a current she could neither resist nor fully control, pulling her closer to the altar as though the stones themselves were calling her name. Elaria. Elaria Frostwind. It seemed to breathe, to whisper, to demand recognition. Ronan stepped closer, close enough that the heat of his presence brushed against her, grounding her even as the magic of the altar threatened to overwhelm her. He spoke, voice low, threaded with awe, with caution, with the unspoken weight of prophecy. "You feel it, don't you?" "Full." The call. Elaria nodded, unable to tear her eyes from the pulsing runes. Her fingers tingled, skin prickling as if charged by unseen electricity. I don't understand it," she admitted, voice trembling, raw with awe and fear. "Why me? Why no? I'm not ready." Ronan's jaw tightened. There was tension coiled in his stance, rigid and powerful, the kind of tension that spoke of battles fought long before she had ever been born. "You're never ready," he said softly, almost mournfully, "but the prophecy doesn't wait. The world doesn't wait. And neither do they. The moment chooses you, Elaria. Not the other way around." Her stomach twisted. The words were heavy, resonant, impossible to shrug off. He had always felt different, yes, cursed and dangerous and isolated. But destiny? She had never dared to imagine that her life, her struggles, her flames, were tied to something so vast, so cosmic, so terrifyingly important. Her mind raced, leaping from fear to disbelief to an impossible, unbidden sense of purpose. And yet doubt clawed at her relentlessly. She felt unworthy, fragile, too young, too inexperienced to bear the weight of what the whispers, the runes, the stones hinted at. A low chant rose on the wind, carried by the mist, seemingly without source, like the collective breath of those long gone. The ancient voices wove around her, brushing against the edges of memory, brushing against the edges of the magic she had spent her life fearing. She felt their weight, their expectation, their judgment, as if generations of alphas, fallen, banished and triumphant, were watching her, testing her, demanding she rise. And then, a voice broke through the mist, sharp, clear, human and yet tinged with power, the kind of voice that made the hair on the back of her neck stand on end. The local seer, shrouded in ragged robes, emerged from behind a curtain of fog, eyes glinting like twin moons reflecting the altar's glow. She spoke Elaria's name with certainty, as though the syllables themselves were prophecy. The one with the silver mark will decide the fate of all packs. The words hit her like a physical force. Her breath caught. The silver mark. She had heard whispers of it in hushed tones as a child, dismissed by the elders as myth, as superstition, but now standing before the altar with the runes thrumming beneath her fingers, and the mist curling like sentient fingers around her ankles, it felt undeniable. It was her. It had always been her. Ronan's presence behind her was a tether to the mortal world, grounding her even as the magic tried to pull her into itself. She could feel the tension coiled in him, the burden he carried, the unspoken knowledge that his own fate, intertwined with hers, was bound by the same prophecy. And that knowledge made him distant, unreadable, yet no less magnetic. She wanted to ask him, to demand he explain, but the words wouldn't come. She realized with a jolt that even he did not fully understand what the altar demanded. Elaria raised her trembling hand, hovering just above the cold stone surface of the altar. Silver light flickered, responding to her touch, flaring like the pulse of her own heart made visible. She felt it resonate through her bones, vibrating with an energy older than the forest, older than the mountains, older than even the packs themselves. And she understood in a way her rational mind could not process. She was part of something far greater, far more ancient than any personal pain, betrayal, or fear. Yet fear remained. The weight of expectation pressed down like the storm she had just escaped, threatening to crush her, to remind her of every failure, every betrayal, every moment she had been told she was too dangerous, too unworthy, too fragile. The fire in her veins threatened to consume her, to lash out unpredictably, and she pulled back, trembling, desperate for control she did not yet have. Ronan's voice, calm yet intense, broke through the thrumming magic. "You are not alone in this," he said. Whatever this destiny demands, you will not face it without me. I am bound to it as much as you are. Do you understand?" Elaria swallowed hard. She wanted desperately to believe him, to let herself trust, to let herself step into the destiny the altar had called her toward. But shadows of doubt clawed at her, memories of betrayal and fear whispering that even power could not shield her, even love could not protect her. And yet she felt the pull. The magic, the prophecy, the altar itself. It was calling her forward, daring her to rise, daring her to embrace what she had spent a lifetime hiding. Her fingers brushed the runes again. A pulse of energy surged up her arm, bright and alive, like the silver flame had been waiting for this moment, waiting for permission to rise. She gasped, eyes wide, feeling the pull in every nerve, every muscle, every heartbeat. It was intoxicating, overwhelming, terrifying, and thrilling beyond anything she had ever imagined. Ronan stepped closer, close enough that the heat of his body brushed against hers, his amber gaze unwavering, steady, grounding her even as the altar threatened to sweep her into something larger than life itself. His presence was both anchor and spark, a dangerous and irresistible combination. And in that moment, Elaria understood that her journey, her destiny, her rise to something greater than survival alone, was intertwined with him. Not just as protector, not just as ally, but as someone whose own fate was bound by the threads of prophecy, whose own power and path would be tested alongside hers. The mist swirled around them, whispers brushing her ears, the altar humming, the silver mark pulsing beneath her skin like a heartbeat made visible. The seer's voice echoed again, faint but resolute. "The one with the silver mark will decide the fate of all packs." Elaria took a shuddering breath, heart pounding, chest tight with fear, awe, and anticipation. She did not yet know if she could bear it, if she could control it, if she could survive the weight of what the prophecy demanded. And yet she felt the undeniable pull, calling, insistent, unavoidable. Her destiny was awakening and there was no turning back. She glanced at Ronan. He met her gaze, expression unreadable but unmistakably aware of her fear, her power, and the undeniable truth that their lives, their choices, and their hearts were now tied to a prophecy older than either of them. And in that gaze, that unspoken understanding, a spark ignited. A tension, a connection, a promise of trials, trust, and a power yet untamed. Ilaria's breath came in short, uneven gasps, body trembling with the weight of revelation, the pull of destiny and the raw, uncontainable energy coursing through her veins. And somewhere deep in the shadows of the misty cliffs, the forest seemed to lean in, waiting, holding its breath, knowing that the story of the silver mark had just begun. The mist around the ancient moon altar had begun to thin, revealing the jagged cliffs, the silver-carved stones, the ethereal glow that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat of its own. For a brief moment, Elaria Frostwind dared to believe she had some semblance of control over herself, over the power surging beneath her skin, over the destiny that now pressed down on her like a weight she could not yet bear. But that fragile illusion shattered in an instant. From the shadows beyond the mist, a howl cut through the night. Low, guttural, and threaded with malice, it rolled across the cliffs like a wave of shadow and steel. Ilaria's stomach dropped. She turned her head slightly, eyes widening as figures emerged through the fog, eyes glinting red in the altar's silver glow. The Crimson Fang Pack. Not just rivals. They were hunters, predators, purveyors of fear, enforcers of an old hatred that had thrived long before Ilaria's birth. And in the front, snarling, claws digging into the rock, eyes narrowed with hatred sharpened by generations of rivalry, was their Alpha. He did not hesitate. His voice cut across the wind like a blade. The cursed one dares touch the altar. The girl with the silver flame, the one none of you should allow, she is a danger to all packs. Ilaria's heart hammered in her chest, a furious, panicked rhythm that echoed the rising tension in the air. She swallowed hard, fingers curling, silver flames surging like an unrestrained river beneath her skin, threatening to spill into the night. She wanted to fight. She wanted to assert the truth she had discovered only moments ago, that she was more than fear, more than whispers, more than the label cursed, that these intruders had cast upon her. But Ronan Stormclaw's hand on her shoulder was firm, grounding, a tether in the midst of chaos. His amber eyes, sharp and wary, scanned the approaching pack. The tension in his jaw, the tight coil of muscle beneath his skin, spoke of a history they had not yet shared, a past heavy with battles, betrayals, and bloodshed. He did not flinch, but neither did he underestimate the threat. And in that moment, Elaria realized something terrifying. He might be powerful and he might protect her, but even he was bound by the reality of the world outside the altar, by rival packs, by the echoes of his past mistakes. The first move came suddenly. A shadow beast, smaller, more agile than those Elaria had fought to escape moments ago, lunged from the edge of the cliff. Ronan shifted fluidly, powerful muscles coiling beneath skin and clothing, fangs flashing, claws slashing. The creature fell before it could reach her, but it was only the beginning. Crimson Fang warriors spilled over the rocks, snarling, moving with deadly coordination. The air filled with the tang of blood, the wet scent of rain-soaked fur, and the sharp metallic bite of fear. Elaria stumbled back instinctively, panic rising. Her silver flame flickered in response, uncontrolled, hot, threatening to ignite without her will. She could feel the eyes of the intruders on her, accusing, hateful, demanding submission. Cursed, dangerous, destroyer of packs. Their voices blended with the wind and the echo of Ronan's controlled growl as he fought, his body moving with lethal precision, his energy flaring as he defended her while keeping one eye on the altar, on the magic, on the destiny calling to her. Fear and fury coursed through her. She wanted to step forward, to strike, to show them all she was more than what they claimed. But every instinct screamed at her, survival first. The altar was not safe. The power thrumming beneath her skin was not yet hers to command fully. And worse, Ronan, fierce and unyielding, was engaged, and she could not allow the chaos of her own inexperience to compromise him, to endanger him when he had already risked everything for her. A red blur lunged at her from the corner of her vision, one of the Crimson Fang warriors, bold, reckless, arrogant. Elaria barely dodged, twisting her body as her shoulder slammed against the stone, breath wrenching from her lungs. Silver flames sparked in her veins, responding to the surge of fear and anger. She clenched her fists, nails digging into her palms, and for a fleeting moment she imagined unleashing it fully, imagining the power flowing from her like a storm of fire and light. But no, she could not. Not yet. Ronan's voice cut through her panic, low and commanding, carrying both authority and warning. Elaria. Away from them. Move. And she obeyed, propelled not just by fear but by trust, by instinct, by the fragile thread of connection that had begun to form between them. She darted behind a fallen stone slab, chest heaving, hands trembling, eyes fixed on him as he met the Crimson Fang warriors head-on, claws flashing, fangs bared, every movement precise, controlled yet wild, a dance of danger and fury. And then the shouting began, not just battle cries but accusations, rumors, venomous words aimed to cut deeper than claws ever could. The cursed girl. She will bring ruin to all packs. Banish her. Each syllable struck her heart like a physical blow. Years of rejection, whispers of fear and shame, all the isolation she had endured, surged back in a wave of pain that threatened to drown her. She pressed her palms to her ears, tried to shut it out, tried to ignore the venom that sought to define her, but the words found every scar, every vulnerability, every piece of doubt she had ever carried. Ronan's growl cut across the clamor, a sound that was both a warning and a promise. His body tensed, energy flaring around him as he engaged the attackers, defending her with everything he was, with every ounce of his power. And still she watched, heart tight, as the balance began to tilt. Numbers were against them. Even he could not fight off every shadow, every claw, every red-eyed hunter converging on the ritual site. Panic surged. Ilaria's silver flame reacted instinctively, coursing through her veins, burning, threatening to erupt. She wanted to help, wanted to unleash the power she had feared all her life, but she knew she lacked control. And then, in the midst of chaos, a clear thought crystallized. Survival first. Retreat. Life. Return stronger. She met Ronan's eyes across the clearing, and in them she saw the same realization reflected. Pain, fear, anger, and an undeniable connection. He could not fight them all. Not without risking everything he had sworn to protect. And yet he would not abandon her. The tension between them was electric, thick with unspoken truths, with mutual recognition of the impossible stakes. Elaria clenched her teeth and made her choice. She would run. Not because she feared him or because she doubted herself, but because survival was the only path to claim her place, to master her power, to fulfill what the altar and the prophecy demanded. Her legs moved before thought caught up, sprinting down the misty path, heart pounding, lungs burning, silver flame pulsing, guiding her through the darkness, carrying her forward even as the cries of accusation and the clash of claws and teeth echoed behind her. Ronan's shout followed her. Not a command, not an order, but a warning wrapped in restraint and desire. Elaria, you'll come back. You'll claim your place. Trust yourself. And though she could not stop, could not look back, the words settled into her heart, hard and bright. A promise, a tether, a spark of hope that defied the fear pressing in from all sides. She ran, trembling, furious, terrified, alive. And as the night swallowed her form, carrying her into the shadows beyond the altar, one thought anchored her, steady amidst the chaos. I will come back. I will claim my place. I will not be defined by fear. I will not be the sacrifice they demand. I will rise. Behind her, the sound of battle continued, fading with distance but never truly leaving her mind. And in the distance Ronan Stormclaw stood, amber eyes glowing in the silver light, bound by loyalty, bound by destiny, bound by a connection neither of them fully understood yet. A bond forged in fire, in danger, and now in flight. The first clash had ended. But Elaria knew with certainty. This was only the beginning. The night had fallen fully now, and the storm that had chased Elaria through the cliffs and the mist had dissipated, leaving behind the quiet aftermath of dripping leaves, the gentle ripple of a silver-lit lake, and the subtle scent of earth and rain mingling in the cool air. Elaria Frostwind moved carefully along the narrow path leading to the hidden cave Ronan had discovered. A sanctuary carved by time, shadowed by cliffs and embraced by the hush of moonlight reflecting on water so still it seemed unreal, almost magical. Every step she took was tentative, weighted with exhaustion, with fear, with the memory of battle and pursuit, but also with a faint, fluttering spark of relief. They had survived. Ronan Stormclaw was already inside, crouched near the entrance, amber eyes glinting in the pale moonlight that spilled in from above. His presence radiated a calm she had never known in another. Solid, unyielding, and yet somehow tender. He glanced at her, expression cautious but unwavering, and without a word, he beckoned her closer. Elaria hesitated. Every instinct screamed caution. She had been hunted, betrayed, and cast aside her entire life. But something about the warmth in his gaze, the way his body moved with the unspoken promise of protection, softened the edges of her fear. She stepped forward, careful, tentative, heart pounding not just with exhaustion but with the undeniable pull of trust beginning to take root. "Sit," he said softly, voice low, intimate, threading through the quiet like a whisper only she could hear. She obeyed, settling on the cold stone floor, shivering slightly, not just from the chill of the cave but from the tension in her body, the aftermath of the chase, the fear that had been her constant companion. Ronan knelt beside her, careful, deliberate, reaching toward her with hands that were roughened by years of battle, but surprisingly gentle. "You're hurt," he said, eyes scanning the cuts along her arms and legs, the bruises forming across her shoulders and sides. She winced as he touched a particularly raw scrape, the pain sharp and immediate, yet oddly grounding. "I'm fine," she murmured, but the lie was thin, trembling on her lips. He wanted to be strong. He had to be strong. She could not allow herself to be vulnerable. Not yet. And yet, as Ronan's hands pressed gently against her skin, cleaning the wounds with water drawn from the lake, the tension in her chest began to ease, even if only slightly. "You don't have to be," he whispered almost to himself, amber eyes never leaving hers. "Not with me." Ilaria's heart skipped. The words were simple, quiet, but they carried an impossible weight. She had spent so long alone, guarding herself against betrayal, against pain, against exposure, that even the suggestion of acceptance made her chest tighten and her throat burn. Trust had always been a dangerous thing, a risk too high, a luxury she could not afford. Yet here, in the quiet hush of moonlight and dripping stone, it seemed possible. She let out a shuddering breath, the tension in her shoulders loosening imperceptibly. I'm afraid," she admitted, voice small, hesitant. "Afraid I'll lose control. That silver flame inside me. I don't know if I can stop it. I don't know if I'm a danger. To you, to everyone." Ronan's gaze softened and he leaned closer, just enough for the light from the lake to catch the angles of his face. "Elaria," he said, voice low, deliberate, "I've seen the fire in you. I've seen its danger, yes, but I've also seen its beauty, its strength. You are not a danger to me. You are more than I could have imagined." Her chest tightened, emotion clawing up through fear and exhaustion. She wanted to believe him, desperately, but years of doubt and betrayal made the words fragile in her mind, like delicate glass teetering on the edge of a cliff. And yet, the sincerity in his voice, the intensity of his gaze, made something inside her stir, a cautious spark of hope she had long buried. Ronan worked silently, cleaning and bandaging her wounds, every movement precise, deliberate, infused with care. The intimacy of the moment, the closeness, the quiet, was almost unbearable in its intensity. Every brush of his hand, every careful touch, every word carried weight she had never allowed herself to feel, weight that made her pulse race and breath catch in a way that had nothing to do with fear. When the last of the cuts was cleaned and the final bandage secured, he sat back slightly, amber eyes studying her with an intensity that made her feel exposed, seen, and simultaneously protected. The fire in her veins pulsed faintly, responding to the proximity, to the warmth, to the energy between them that was quiet yet undeniable. "I've been banished," he said finally, voice low, almost confessional, threading through the cave like a shadow. "Years ago, my own pack turned against me. I have scars," he said, tapping a line along his forearm, some visible, some hidden. "I know what it's like to be hunted, to be feared, to be told your existence is a threat. You're not alone in this, Elaria. Not while I am here." Her chest ached with a mixture of empathy, sorrow, and the unspoken recognition of shared pain. She shifted slightly, brushing her fingers against her own bandaged arms, imagining the echoes of her own scars mirrored in his. For a long moment, silence hung between them, filled only with the subtle drip of water from the cave ceiling, the gentle ripple of the lake outside, and the quiet hum of something unspoken, something fragile, something waiting to ignite. Her gaze flicked to his, tentative, searching, and in the moonlight she saw it. A vulnerability he did not hide, a depth of feeling he did not mask, a resonance of shared experience that drew her in against her better judgment. She wanted to step closer. She wanted to trust. She wanted to believe that he would not let her fall, even if the world beyond the cave sought to destroy her. And then, almost imperceptibly, their faces drew closer, the air between them charged with anticipation, longing, and fear. Ronan's voice, a whisper threaded with sincerity and something deeper, broke the tension. "I see you, all of you. And I'm not afraid." Elaria's breath caught. Every fear, every doubt, every hesitation in her chest waged war against the pull of trust, against the fire of connection, against the undeniable magnetism of proximity. Yet in the depths of her being, a fragile truth began to take root. Perhaps finally she did not need to face her destiny alone. Perhaps finally someone could see her, not the frightened girl, not the hunted sacrifice, not the girl cursed with silver flame, but the entirety of her. Her strength, her fear, her power, her vulnerability, her heart. The space between them was electric, a silent acknowledgement of unspoken desire, unacknowledged trust, and the perilous intimacy of shared pain. Her pulse raced, body taut, aware of every breath, every heartbeat, every subtle movement. The cave around them seemed to shrink, the moonlight to sharpen, the sound of water and night to fade, leaving only the undeniable reality. Two souls, scarred, hunted, powerful, and bound by circumstance, hovering on the precipice of something neither fully understood. Elaria wanted to lean in, to bridge the gap, to feel the certainty of connection against the backdrop of uncertainty. She wanted to let herself trust, to let herself feel, to let herself be seen. But fear lingered, fragile yet persistent. A reminder of past betrayals, of danger still lurking beyond the cave, of the silver flame that could consume her if she faltered. Ronan sensed it, the subtle hesitation, the tremor in her body, and he smiled, not mockingly, not teasingly, but softly, tenderly, a smile that carried promise. "Whenever you're ready," he whispered, voice almost lost in the hush of the cave, "I'll be here. You don't have to force it. You don't have to be perfect. Just trust me or leave. The choice is yours." Elaria's chest heaved with emotion. She felt the fire inside her pulse, the warmth of connection, the ache of hope, the thrill of possibility. And though fear still lingered, small but insistent, she allowed herself, for the first time in a long time, to feel something more than survival. She allowed herself to believe, however tentatively, that someone could see her, truly see her, and not flinch, not recoil, not fear what she was becoming. She lifted her gaze, meeting his amber eyes, and in the silent understanding that passed between them, the almost kiss hung in the air, suspended in the intimacy of trust, longing, and fear. And in that moment the world beyond the cave, the prophecy, the crimson fong, the storms, they all existed, yes, but they were secondary to the fragile, luminous connection forming here, between two hearts scarred, hunted, and ready perhaps to face the fire together. Elaria took a deep, shuddering breath, letting it flow through her, feeling the tension in her shoulders ease, feeling her pulse align with his, feeling the silver flame within her simmer in recognition, in anticipation, in promise. Trust had begun its slow, careful threading through the fragile web of fear and hope. And though the night was far from over, though danger still lurked, though destiny awaited in all its terrifying glory, for the first time, Elaria Frostwind allowed herself a measure of peace, and the knowledge that she was not alone. The hidden cave, which had offered warmth and solace under moonlight, suddenly felt unbearably small, fragile, as though it could not contain the storm that was coming. Elaria Frostwind sensed it before it arrived. The shift in the wind, the charged ripple in the air, the distant echoes of voices she had hoped never to hear again. Her heart sank as the mist of the cliffs stirred, carrying the unmistakable scent of her past. The Shadowpine elders, the very pack that had once rejected her, condemned her, and now sought to dictate her fate once more. Before she could fully react, they were upon her, descending with the quiet inevitability of doom, their robes dark as midnight, faces masked with the authority of judgment. Words spilled from them like venom, cold, sharp, and deliberate. "The cursed one dares to rise again. She will destroy everything we love, everything we hold sacred. The prophecy, she is its ruin." Elaria froze, chest tightening, breath hitching as the accusations tore into her, each syllable a lash against the raw nerves of old wounds. Betrayal was a familiar companion, but this was far worse than whispers behind her back or dismissals from elders who had once feigned concern. This was public, deliberate, and designed to humiliate her, to strip her of every shred of power, to force her back into submission. Ronan Stormclaw stepped in front of her, body coiled and tense like a spring ready to release. His amber eyes glowed fiercely, reflecting the flickering silver light from her veins as her pulse surged. For a heartbeat he considered silence, restraint, weighing the consequences of defying the elders who had once exiled him as well. The tension in him was palpable, an internal war waging between honor, fury, and instinct. Elaria's gaze lifted to meet his, searching, desperate, and in that moment she saw the hesitation, the shadow of doubt flitting across his face, the weight of history pressing upon him. But then, as if a decision had been carved into his soul by something far older than either of them, his shoulders squared, his stance widened, and his voice rang out, clear and unwavering, cutting through the murmur of judgment. Enough. The elders faltered, the word like a blade cleaving the air. Ronan's gaze never left hers, grounding her, empowering her, and in it she felt a spark ignite, the first true surge of defiance she had allowed herself in years. She straightened, chest rising, hands trembling with the energy that had always scared her most. Her silver flame pulsed beneath her skin, hot, alive, a controlled fire coiled at the edge of her control. She was no longer hiding. She was no longer afraid. One elder, older than the mountains themselves, leaned forward, voice trembling with authority and fear. She is dangerous. Her power, her bloodline, will unmake all we have built. You must renounce her, Ronan, or... Ronan's amber eyes blazed, and he cut them off with a growl that carried the force of mountains, raw and unyielding. I will not abandon her. She is not your puppet. She is not your shame. She is my charge, my companion, and she will stand or none of you will stand at all. The declaration hung in the air, a tangible defiance that made the elders falter. Elaria's heart raced, a mix of fear, exhilaration, and unbidden pride coursing through her. For the first time someone had not just acknowledged her power, but had stood with her against the very world that sought to suppress it. The crowd of elders hissed and murmured, angered, disbelieving, and then, as though drawn by the friction of her own fury, Elaria felt the silver flame ignite fully. This was not the uncontrolled, wild flicker of panic she had feared, but a surge of power honed by desperation and purpose. Her hands glowed, faintly at first, then brighter, a silvery light radiating from her skin, illuminating the mist, the cliffs, and the faces of those who had sought to condemn her. The air hummed with energy, vibrating with the intensity of her control, the strength of her voice, the clarity of her defiance. I am not your sacrifice. I am not your curse. I am Elaria Frostwind, and I decide my path. Her words carried like thunder across the ritual site, cutting through whispers and accusations. The silver flames spiraled upward, coiling around her in a controlled fury, illuminating the elders' faces in stark relief. The shock, the fear, the realization that the girl they had scorned, the girl they had branded dangerous, was now a force beyond their control. Ronan's presence beside her was steady, unwavering, a constant reminder that she was not alone in this. His hand brushed hers subtly, not in restraint but in solidarity, a shared energy that strengthened her will, tempered her rage, and anchored her amidst the storm she had become. The almost kiss under the moonlight, the shared confessions, the trust that had begun to weave itself between them, they were no longer fleeting moments. They were foundation. They were power. They were declaration. Ilaria's silver flame surged higher, coiling like living light around her body, yet she maintained control, drawing from every lesson of fear and survival she had endured. She stepped forward, eyes blazing, voice ringing. I will not be your weapon, your warning, or your shame. I will not bow. I will rise and I will decide my fate. Not you, not them, not anyone. The elders recoiled as if struck, their authority diminished by the undeniable reality of her power, her control, her presence. Their murmurs of prophecy, twisted and manipulated, crumbled under the weight of her command, leaving only silence punctuated by the crackle of silver flame and the steady, unwavering growl of Ronan Stormclaw at her side. Ilaria's chest heaved, not just from exertion, but from the fierce rush of vindication, fury, and empowerment. For the first time she felt the weight of her destiny as something she could wield, something she could embrace, rather than a chain binding her to fear. And in that moment, the first true sense of liberation surged through her veins, harmonizing with the flame within, harmonizing with the steady, grounding presence of the Alpha who had chosen to stand beside her. The elders, defeated but unwilling to leave entirely, receded, muttering curses under their breath, but it no longer mattered. Elaria stood tall, glowing in silver light, unyielding, untamed and unbroken. Ronan's hand brushed hers again, faint but electric, anchoring her in the knowledge that while the world might oppose her, there was at least one who would never waver. And as the echoes of accusation faded into the night, the silver flame coiled, pulsed and softened, not extinguished but tempered, controlled, a testament to Ilaria's mastery over fear, fury and power. The first true battle for her identity, her destiny and her place in the world had been won. But the story was far from over. The night air was thick with anticipation, charged with the kind of electric energy that made the hair on the back of one's neck rise, that made the earth itself seem to hum with tension. Elaria Frostwind stood at the edge of the ancient ruins, the remnants of a civilization older than any living pack, shadows stretching like fingers across jagged stone. Her silver flame pulsed beneath her skin, warming her veins, a living force tethered to every heartbeat, every breath. Tonight there would be no hiding. Tonight there would be no retreat. Tonight she would claim what was hers. Her power, her destiny, her place in a world that had sought to define her as nothing. From the darkness beyond the ruins, the ground shuddered with the approach of her enemies. The cursed beast emerged first, massive, shadowed, fangs glinting with anticipation, eyes burning like molten amber in the gloom. Its form was unnatural, twisted, an embodiment of the pack's fear and the twisted prophecy that had haunted her since birth. Around it, the rival packs of Shadowpine and Crimson Fong encircled her, their eyes wide with accusation, greed and dread. They had come to claim her, or to destroy her. Ilaria's chest tightened as she inhaled, drawing the night air deep into her lungs. She could feel the wolf beneath her skin stirring, clawing at the edges of control, its instinct merging with the silver flame that had always marked her as different. She had feared this combination, feared the power that could tear through everything if uncontrolled. But fear was no longer her master. Rage, purpose, survival and a sense of belonging, the kind that had taken years to cultivate, were now her guides. She stepped forward, and the ground beneath her seemed to respond, trembling slightly as if the earth itself recognized the rising storm within her. Light began to shimmer across the ruins, faint at first, then blindingly bright, casting the dark silhouettes of her enemies into sharp relief. The cursed beast growled, low and threatening, but it hesitated, intuitively sensing that the force before it was no ordinary prey. Ilaria's hands lifted, silver light coiling around her fingers like liquid fire. Her wolf form pulsed at the edges of her consciousness, and with a sharp, guttural cry, she released her control just enough to merge her human resolve with the raw power of her wolf self. Muscles elongated, senses sharpened, fangs glinting under the silver flame, eyes glowing amber in the darkness. She was no longer merely human, no longer a hunted girl, no longer a sacrifice. She was a force of nature, elemental and unstoppable. The cursed beast lunged, massive paws smashing into the stone, but Elaria met it with unflinching courage. Silver flames spiraled outward from her body, a protective barrier, a weapon, a declaration. The light seared across the ruins, washing over the rival packs, forcing them to shield their eyes, to stumble backward in awe and terror. Every shadowed corner of the altar quaked with the intensity of her power, and the stone beneath her paws vibrated, ancient runes along the walls igniting as if recognizing the rightful heir to their magic. "I am not yours to control," Elaria roared, voice echoing through the canyon, resonating with both human and wolf, her words carrying the authority of someone who had endured betrayal, rejection and fear, and emerged unbroken. The silver flame pulsed in response, coiling around her, bright enough to make the stars above blink, hot enough to make the air shimmer, intense enough that the very night seemed to recoil in awe. The cursed beast froze, nostrils flaring, ears twitching, as if it recognized something primal, something undeniable in the declaration of power. The rival packs shifted uneasily, whispers of fear cutting through their previous arrogance. They had believed her vulnerable. They had believed she was theirs to manipulate, theirs to condemn. They had underestimated the culmination of years of fear, control, survival and inner fire. Ronan Stormclaw stepped into her light, close enough that the warmth of his presence merged with hers, anchoring her in the human world even as her wolf self surged. Amber eyes locked with hers, unflinching, unwavering. No hesitation. No doubt. Just solidarity, shared power, and unspoken promise. And in that glance, Elaria found clarity. This was not only her fight. It was theirs together. With a low, resonant growl, Elaria surged forward, movement fluid, predatory, elegant, and devastating. Silver flame erupted from her body, licking at the air, streaking toward the edges of the ruins, forcing the cursed beast back with every step, claw, and snarl. Her wolf form moved in perfect harmony with her human mind, controlled fury merging with instinctual precision. The ground cracked beneath her, loose stones tumbling into the abyss, sparks flying as her silver light collided with shadow and malice. Ronan matched her stride, fangs flashing, claws ready, his own power awakened but secondary, a balance to hers. They moved as one, not merely allies but partners in every sense. Each movement a dance of fire and strength, each glance a silent exchange of trust and recognition. The air itself seemed to bend around them, charged with the force of unleashed potential, a testament to what had been hidden, feared, and suppressed. Elaria felt it. The prophecy, the destiny, the whispers of ancestors who had left their mark on this very land. But now it was no longer a burden. It was a weapon, a shield, a truth. Every step she took, every surge of silver flame, every beat of her heart, declared her autonomy. The world would no longer define her. The packs would no longer manipulate her. The beast would no longer terrorize what she had claimed as her own. And then, as if the universe itself acknowledged her transformation, the ruins responded. Ancient stones trembled, cracks spreading like veins of light, long-forgotten runes igniting along the cliffside. The ground shook beneath the feet of the cursed beast, forcing it to falter, its massive form caught in the brilliance of silver fire. Lightning arced from the night sky, striking near the altar, illuminating the scene in a blinding cascade, revealing the sheer scale of power now under Elaria's control. "I am not yours to control," she roared again, the words amplified by the resonance of her wolf form, her silver flame, and the very energy of the sacred ruins. Every syllable carried years of fear, years of exile, years of self-doubt, transformed into unyielding strength. She was untouchable now. Not because she was invulnerable but because she had embraced her fear, her fire, her destiny, and herself. The cursed beast froze, growls reverberating against the cliffs, nostrils flaring but unable to advance. The rival packs scattered, fear replacing the arrogance that had brought them to this place. They had underestimated the power of a girl who had been hunted, betrayed, and dismissed, yet refused to be broken. Ronan moved to stand beside her fully, form glowing faintly under the reflection of her silver flame. He did not speak, he did not need to. His presence alone was a declaration. They were united, bound by trust, by shared power, by the fire that had finally been claimed. Elaria's breath came in sharp, controlled bursts. Her silver flame surged and subsided in waves, not reckless, not wild, but honed, deliberate, a tangible manifestation of her mastery over herself and the world that had tried to destroy her. And though the threat had not been fully vanquished, though shadows still lingered at the edge of her vision, though danger still existed beyond the cliffs, she had achieved something far more profound. She had claimed her power, her identity, and her agency. As the echoes of her declaration faded into the night, the cursed beast backed down, unwilling, unprepared, confronted by a force it could not dominate. Elaria, chest heaving, claws digging into the stone beneath her, stood tall, wolf form luminous with silver flame, and human eyes burning with determination and defiance. She was no longer prey. She was no longer a sacrifice. She was the storm, the flame, the reckoning. The ruins trembled once more, ancient magic awakening as if recognizing the culmination of centuries of prophecy. And as the first true standoff settled into tense silence, a new awareness dawned in Elaria's mind. The greater threat was not gone. It had merely stepped back into the shadows, observing, waiting. But she would not fear it. Not anymore. She was ready. She was whole. She was fire incarnate. Her silver flame flared one final time, a luminous halo of defiance, and her voice, low but unyielding, echoed into the night. "I am not yours. I am not theirs. I am mine. And I will rise." The night had stretched itself across the ruins, draping everything in silver shadows and the faint shimmer of lingering moonlight. The air was thick with the aftermath of unleashed power, the scent of ozone, scorched earth, and raw magic lingering like incense over the jagged stones. Elaria Frostwind stood amidst it all, glowing faintly in the waning silver flame that still coiled around her like a protective halo. Her chest rose and fell with steady, purposeful breaths, the wolf within her still thrumming, aware, alert, yet calm under her command. Ronan Stormclaw remained at her side, silent but present, the amber glow of his eyes scanning the horizon, measuring unseen threats, guarding the woman who had defied every prophecy and expectation thrown against her. He had never wavered, never faltered, and yet his closeness carried weight, not the weight of fear but of shared understanding, of connection forged in fire, blood, and battle. Ilaria's gaze swept across the ruined altar, over the receding forms of the rival packs, and lingered on the shadows of the cliffs, the place where danger still waited, watching, plotting. And for the first time in her life she did not feel small. She did not feel hunted. She did not feel the gnawing isolation of the past decades. She felt power, raw, unshakable, undeniable. She felt the force of her destiny, the echo of every ancestor who had come before her, whispering through the stones and the wind. Rise, claim what is yours, do not bow. Yet beneath the triumph, beneath the roar of controlled silver flame and the resonance of wolf instinct, there was still a question. A shadow, a challenge, a reflection of all she had endured. Would the world accept her? Could it? Would they see her as hero or as danger? As savior or as curse? The voices of those who had denounced her, who had branded her, who had banished her in life and spirit, still lingered faintly, carried on the wind. She will destroy everything we love. Her eyes softened, shimmering with unshed tears as her mind drifted to the faces of those she loved, those she had lost, those she had barely known. She thought of the pack that had abandoned her, of the rivals who had sought to control her, of the countless nights she had spent trembling in the cold, hiding from her own power, questioning whether she deserved to exist. And yet, through it all, one truth remained undeniable. She had survived. She had not only survived, she had emerged whole, fierce, unbroken. The sound of Ronan's steady breathing beside her anchored her to the present. He did not speak, did not offer advice, did not question. He simply was, a living reminder that loyalty, connection, and trust were not myths. And in that presence, Elaria realized the greatest power she possessed was not her silver flame, not her wolf form, not even her lineage. It was the courage to stand fully, unapologetically in the face of fear and opposition. Her voice, quiet but unwavering, broke the hush of the night. "If they fear me," she whispered to the wind, to the ruins, to the unseen forces that had tracked her every move, "then let them. But I will no longer run. I will no longer hide. I will rise and I will choose my own path." A shiver ran through the air as if the world itself held its breath. Somewhere in the shadows the cursed beast lingered, sensing the shift, understanding that its prey had become a predator, that the hunted had become a force no longer bound by chains of fear or prophecy. And yet even in that knowledge there was uncertainty, the delicate balance between triumph and new danger. The night was alive with it, quivering with potential, poised on the knife edge of destiny. And then the voice came, not from the shadows, not from the elders, not from the beast, but from the narrator's own heart, as though questioning the listener directly, pulling them into the moment alongside Elaria. Would you have chosen her, or feared her too? Could you have stood in the ruins with silver fire coursing through your veins, with the weight of destiny pressing on your shoulders and refused to bow? Could you have faced the darkness, the doubt, the whispers of those who condemned you and still claimed your place, your power, your right to rise? The question hung in the air like a living thing, electric, demanding, impossible to ignore. It was not merely for Elaria. It was for the listener, for anyone who had ever been doubted, feared, dismissed, or betrayed. It reached into the quiet corners of the soul, brushing against memory, against empathy, against hope. It demanded reflection, demanded engagement, demanded a response that could not be delayed. And as the question lingered, Ilaria's form shimmered in the silver light, the coiled fire at the edges of her wolf and human self pulsing like a heartbeat in the ruins of an ancient world. She did not answer aloud. Her defiance, her mastery, her courage, spoke louder than words could ever manage. The choice she had shown was not to be given to the world. It was to be claimed, to be seized, to be owned. If this story lit something inside you, subscribe to Anne's Romance Collections. The voice continued, soft but insistent, lyrical, a whisper that seemed to flow from the ruins themselves. Here we tell tales that burn. Tales that ignite fire where fear once lived. Tales of courage, of love, of power, of hearts unbound. Follow Elaria. Witness her journey. Stand beside her and let the fire inside you rise too. The night settled into quiet tension, not emptiness but expectancy. Ilaria's amber eyes glimmered with resolve. The silver flame coiled gently around her, and Ronan's form mirrored her readiness. Somewhere beyond the ruins, danger still waited, greater threats lurking in the shadows, forces that would test them again. But for this moment the world was hers. Her power was hers. Her choice was hers. And the voice lingered, lingering long after the words had been spoken, resonating deep within the listener's mind. Will you choose her side? Or will you fear what you do not yet understand? The question, unspoken yet undeniable, echoed across stone, wind, and heart, leaving a shiver in its wake, a pull toward action, a spark of connection, a promise that the story and the fire was far from over. The ruins lay quiet now, but the quiet was deceptive. Smoke curled lazily from shattered stones, curling around the jagged edges like ghostly fingers clinging to a forgotten past. The night sky, once illuminated by the silver fire of Elaria Frostwind, had dimmed, leaving only the faint glow of distant stars to reflect upon the fractured landscape. The air was thick with the residue of unleashed power, the scent of ozone, scorched earth, and the faint tang of magic still lingering, whispering of events too immense to be contained. Elaria and Ronan moved side by side, careful, deliberate, yet heavy with the weight of what had transpired. Each step was measured against the tremors of the earth beneath them, each breath synchronized with the pulse of the ruins, still vibrating with residual energy. They were a picture of strength, of unity, of raw, untamed power tempered with purpose. But even in that, the night held its shadows. Ronan's amber eyes scanned the perimeter endlessly, wolf instincts sharpening, senses alive to every whisper of movement, every subtle shift of the wind. He remained vigilant not only for the remnants of the rival packs, but for the unseen forces that had lingered in the shadows during their confrontation. He knew, intuitively, deeply, that tonight was only the beginning. That while one battle had been won, the war for destiny, for power, for freedom was far from over. Ilaria's gaze lingered on the ruins, on the broken altar where ancient prophecy had tried to cage her, tried to define her, tried to strip her of her agency. She inhaled the cool night air, chest swelling with a mixture of exhaustion, triumph, and an unnameable anticipation. Her silver flame had dimmed to a soft pulse along her skin, a gentle heartbeat echoing the strength she now claimed for herself. And yet, even in her triumph, there was unease, a premonition, a whisper of something greater waiting, watching, assessing. The wind shifted, carrying a subtle vibration, not entirely natural. It tugged at her senses, at her instincts, a ripple of movement beneath the quiet night. Her ears twitched, wolf and human alike, catching the faintest sound, the soft murmur of a voice, low and distant, yet impossibly clear. She is not the only one. The true Alpha hasn't risen, yet. The words slithered through the ruins, curling around the stones, sinking into the ground, vibrating in her bones. Elaria froze, heart skipping, pulse thrumming with an unfamiliar tension. She exchanged a glance with Ronan, whose body stiffened immediately, eyes narrowing, ears pricked, every muscle coiled like a spring ready to strike. The voice had not belonged to the rival packs. It had belonged to something older, something larger, something far beyond their comprehension. An unseen entity that had observed from the shadows, waiting for the moment when destiny would awaken. The earth beneath their feet shivered. A subtle rhythmic trembling that started at the toes, spread up the legs through the core, resonated in the stones of the ruins. The cracks along the altar glimmered faintly once more, as if reacting to the voice, to the presence of power awakened. The sky above flickered, clouds parting in sudden bursts of moonlight, illuminating the jagged cliffs and casting long, ominous shadows over the battlefield they had just survived. Ilaria's fingers flexed instinctively, silver flame flickering along the tips, soft but alive, ready. Her wolf senses prickled, detecting not just danger but possibility, power, and challenge. The air carried it, thick and almost tangible like the pulse of an approaching storm. She felt the gravity of it, the promise that her journey, her fight, her destiny was far from complete. There were others. Others like her, others who carried threads of prophecy, others whose presence could challenge, aid, or perhaps threaten everything she had fought for. Ronan moved closer, instinctively protective, yet giving her space, respecting the rhythm of her power and her autonomy. He did not speak, for no words could suffice. Instead, his presence anchored her in the moment, his energy harmonizing with hers, a shared heartbeat in the midst of uncertainty. And in that quiet connection she drew strength, not just from herself, not just from her power, but from the bond forged in fire and trust, in adversity and shared survival. The ruins themselves seemed to pulse in response. Loose stones trembled, faint sparks of energy dancing across ancient runes along the walls. Shadows shifted in the corners of her vision, not yet solid, not yet revealed, but unmistakably watching, evaluating, waiting. The air hummed with latent power, a silent warning that the night's confrontation was merely the overture to something far more immense. Elaria exhaled slowly, wolf ears flicking as she scanned the horizon, amber eyes catching every subtle movement, every glimmer of light, every tremor in the ground. This isn't over, the unspoken truth resonated in her mind. Not for me. Not for Ronan. Not for the world that had tried to contain what I am. She felt it in her bones, the awareness that every action, every decision, every heartbeat would carry weight far beyond anything she had known. The distant whisper came again, faint but deliberate, curling around the cliffs like mist settling into valleys. The true Alpha hasn't risen, yet. There was an edge to it, a promise of challenge, a threat, a potential for chaos. And yet for the first time Elaria did not tremble. She did not flinch. She had faced shadowed prophecy, banishment, betrayal, and near destruction, and she had emerged stronger, sharper, unbroken. She glanced at Ronan, who mirrored her determination, his own form a blend of power, vigilance, and unwavering loyalty. Together they stepped from the smoldering ruins, the soft glow of her silver flame illuminating the broken stones beneath their feet. Each step was purposeful, measured, yet carrying the weight of destiny, the knowledge that the path ahead would test them in ways yet unknown. And as the wind swept across the cliffs, carrying both smoke and faint whispers of unseen forces, the narrator's voice, rich, slow, and prophetic, spoke once more. This story has only begun. Elaria has claimed her power, Ronan has stood beside her, and yet, greater threats lie in the shadows. Forces that watch, forces that wait, forces that will test every heartbeat, every choice, every spark of courage. The night has trembled, the ruins have awakened, and the prophecy has only begun to unfold. The ground shuddered faintly beneath their steps, a reminder of the power that lingered in every stone, every rune, every echo of history. And somewhere in the darkness, a presence observed, unseen but undeniable, waiting for the moment when the next chapter would begin. Elaria paused at the cliff's edge, silver flame coiling lightly around her wrist, amber eyes reflecting the first hints of a rising dawn. Ronan remained close, silent, his gaze scanning every shadow, every movement. The ruins behind them smoldered, silent witnesses to the storm of fire and power that had been unleashed. And as the wind carried the faintest whisper once more, the prophetic truth lingered. She is not the only one. The true Alpha hasn't risen, yet. The words like distant thunder rolled across the night, echoing in the heart of every listener, promising a future storm, a deeper challenge, a story that would continue to burn long after the last ember faded.